Zhao, she just wanted to help, but ended up engaged to the CEO's grandson. The rain pounded violently against the hospital windows as Elena Martinez clutched her unconscious mother's hand. The machines emitted constant beeps that had become the soundtrack to her nightmare. 3 days. 3 days since her mother had collapsed in the kitchen of the small family restaurant, and the doctors gave her no hope. "Miss Martinez," the doctor's voice startled her. "We need to talk." Elena turned around, her eyes reddened with unshed tears. She knew it wasn't good news. It never was when doctors use that tone. "The operation your mother needs is very expensive. Without it, I'm afraid—" The doctor didn't finish the sentence, but Elena understood perfectly. "How much?" he asked in a broken voice. 200,000 pesos, and we need an answer soon." Elena felt as if the ground had opened up beneath her feet. 200,000 pesos. It could have been 1,000,000. She worked as a waitress in a neighborhood cafe, barely earning enough to cover basic expenses. Her mother had invested all her savings in the restaurant, which was now closed. She left the hospital like a lost soul, wandering aimlessly in the rain. Her soaked shoes sloshed through the puddles as her desperate mind searched for a solution that didn't exist. Lenders, banks, family members, she had exhausted every option. That's when he saw it. An elegantly dressed older man staggered along the sidewalk. His expensive suit was wrinkled and his shirt unbuttoned. He had clearly had too much to drink. Elena watched as he headed straight for the street where cars were whizzing by. Without a second thought, she ran up to him and pulled him by the arm, just as a bus brushed past the spot where he would have been standing. "Sir, it's okay," Elena cried, holding him firmly. The man looked at her with glassy but surprisingly lucid eyes. You saved my life." "It was nothing, sir. Just be more careful, please." "What's your name?" the man asked, straightening slightly. "Elena. Elena Martinez." "Elena," he repeated, as if memorizing the name. I need to reward you." "No need, sir. Really." But the man was already searching his wallet with trembling hands. He took out a card and handed it to her. "Call me tomorrow. Promise you'll call me." Elena took the card more out of politeness than interest. At that moment, all she could think about was her mother. She said goodbye to the man and helped him get into a taxi. Hello, dear subscribers. If this story touches your heart as much as it does mine, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Your support means the world to me and helps me continue bringing you these incredible stories. Now let's get back to Elena. The next morning, Elena woke up in the uncomfortable hospital chair. She had spent the night there, watching over her mother. The older man's card was crumpled in his pocket. She took it out and read Ricardo Mendoza, Grupo Mendoza Empresarial. Elena frowned. That name sounded familiar. She searched her phone and nearly fainted. Ricardo Mendoza was one of the richest men in the country, owner of a business empire that spanned everything from construction to technology. With trembling hands, he dialed the number. "Mr. Mendoza, I'm Elena, the girl from last night." "Elena, I knew you'd call. Listen, I need to see you. I have a proposition for you." 2 hours later, Elena stood in front of an imposing glass building in the city center. She had never been in such a luxurious place. The elevator took her to the top floor, where an impeccably dressed secretary led her to an office that seemed larger than her entire apartment. Ricardo Mendoza looked completely different, sober, elegant, with the commanding presence of a man accustomed to power. But his eyes retained the same warmth as the night before. "Elena, please sit down. I want to help you." "Mr. Mendoza, I'm not looking for—" "Last night you didn't just save my life," he interrupted. "You gave me a reason to keep living. You see, that day I had received devastating news about my health. I had decided, well, I had decided it wasn't worth fighting anymore. Elena felt a lump in her throat. But you showed me there's still good in the world. People who help without expecting anything in return. I want to give back, but I also need your help. My help? Ricardo leaned back in his chair. I have a grandson, Alejandro. He's brilliant, hard-working, but complicated. After a bad love experience, he's become cynical, even cruel. He needs to learn what you taught me last night, that love and kindness still exist. I don't understand what he wants from me. I want you to pretend to be his fiancée. Elena was speechless. Excuse me? Listen to me before you refuse. My family has been pressuring me to get Alejandro married. He flatly refuses. But if you appear as his fiancée, it will give me time to learn to value what truly matters in life. In return, I will pay for your mother's entire operation and give you a job at the company. Elena thought of her mother, of the machines keeping her alive, of the time that was running out. For how long? 6 months. After that, they can break the engagement if they so wish. What if your grandson doesn't accept? Ricardo smiled for the first time. Alejandro has no choice. According to his father's will, he must marry before he turns 30 to inherit his share of the company. He turns 30 in 8 months. Elena closed her eyes. It was crazy, but her mother was dying. I do. That same afternoon, Elena signed a contract that would change her life forever. Ricardo immediately wired the money for her mother's surgery, which was scheduled for the following week. Elena felt as if she could breathe for the first time in days. There's something else, Ricardo said as she prepared to leave. Alejandro can't know this is an arrangement. He thinks I met you by chance, and that you impressed me so much that I decided you were perfect for him. How am I going to convince him that we're dating? He'll be arriving tomorrow from a business trip. Tonight, my assistant will take you shopping for some suitable clothes, and tomorrow I'll officially introduce you. Remember, you met 3 months ago, you've been dating secretly, and you decided to make it official. Elena nodded, feeling like she was in a dream, or rather, a well-paid nightmare. The next day, Elena looked at herself in the marble bathroom mirror of the Mendoza mansion. The navy blue dress she was wearing probably cost more than her entire wardrobe combined. Her hair had been professionally styled, and she wore subtle but perfect makeup. She looked like a completely different person. Elena, it's time, the maid announced. Her heart beating like a drum, Elena walked down the marble stairs. Men's voices were coming from the study. She stopped in front of the closed door, took a deep breath and knocked. Forward! Elena walked in and immediately felt a commanding presence. Alejandro Mendoza was standing in front of the window, his back to her. He was taller than she had imagined, with broad shoulders beneath a perfectly tailored suit. His black hair was impeccably styled. Alejandro, said Ricardo, I want to introduce you to someone very special. Alejandro turned slowly, and Elena felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. He was devastatingly handsome, with perfectly chiseled features and green eyes that seemed to see straight into her soul. But there was something cold about those eyes, something that made her shudder. And you are? He asked in a deep, controlled voice. I'm Elena, she murmured, feeling herself blush. Elena is your fiancée, Ricardo announced happily. The silence that followed was deafening. Alejandro didn't move, didn't blink, just studied her as if she were an interesting specimen. Finally, he spoke. Sorry. You've been dating her for 3 months, Ricardo continued, ignoring the palpable tension in the room. You decided to formalize the relationship. Isn't that wonderful? Alejandro's eyes narrowed. Grandpa, can we talk privately? Of course. Elena, dear, why don't you go to the garden? Alejandro will join you in a few minutes. Elena quickly left, but she couldn't help but hear the raised voices coming from the study. Alejandro wasn't happy at all. 15 minutes later, he appeared in the garden. His expression was completely different, smiling, charming, but his eyes held that coldness that unsettled her. "Elena, love," he said loudly, clearly so the employees could hear. Then he leaned closer and whispered in her ear, "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't going to work." Elena felt a chill. "It's not a game." "Oh, no. How much is he paying you?" "Alejandro, Look, princess," he interrupted, maintaining his fake smile. "I don't know what you told my grandfather, but it's not going to work with me. I have 3 rules. Don't get any closer to me than necessary. Don't expect me to act like a besotted boyfriend when we're alone. And don't you dare fall in love with me." Elena looked him straight in the eyes. "Don't worry. Falling in love with you is the last thing I'd do." For the first time, Alejandro looked surprised. He clearly hadn't expected her to answer. A small smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Perfect, so we understand the rules. Wait, before we continue with this increasingly intense story, please remember to subscribe and like the channel if you're enjoying this drama. Your reactions in the comments give me life. Do you think Elena can survive Alejandro? Let's keep watching." The following days were a meticulously orchestrated torture. Elena had moved into the Mendoza mansion, officially to be closer to her fiancé. In reality, she lived in a completely separate wing of the house, and Alejandro made sure their paths crossed as little as possible. When they had to appear in public together, Alejandro transformed. He was attentive, charming, the perfect boyfriend. But the moment they were alone, the mask fell away, and he reverted to the cold man who treated her as if she were invisible. The first real test came a week later, at a family dinner. Elena was incredibly nervous. She had studied everything she could about the Mendoza family, but knowing names and dates was very different from facing real people. "Remember," Alejandro whispered to her as they headed to the dining room. "Smile, nod, and let me do the talking." The Mendoza family was exactly as intimidating as Elena had imagined. Ricardo presided over the table with the presence of a patriarch, while Alejandro's uncles, aunts, and cousins scrutinized her with barely concealed curiosity. Elena felt as if she were on trial. "So, Elena," said Carmen, Ricardo's sister, "tell us about a family." Elena felt her mouth go dry. "Well, my mom and I run a small restaurant." "A restaurant?" interrupted Carlos, Alejandro's cousin. "What kind of restaurant?" "Traditional Mexican food. Nothing fancy, but the food is good." Elena noticed the glances exchanged around the table. Clearly, it wasn't what they were expecting to hear. "How charming," Carmen murmured, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Alejandro, who had been observing the situation with a neutral expression, suddenly took Elena's hand across the table. "Elena is an amazing cook. You should try her pozole, Aunt Carmen. It's better than any 5-star restaurant." Elena looked at him in surprise. It was the first time he'd defended her. "In fact," Alejandro continued, "I'm thinking of asking you to open a restaurant in one of our shopping complexes. It could be an excellent investment." The expressions around the table changed immediately. If Alejandro was willing to invest in Elena's business, then maybe she wasn't so unsuitable after all. After dinner, Elena followed Alejandro into the garden. "Why did you do that?" "Do what?" "Defend myself. You said not to expect you to act like a besotted boyfriend when we were alone." Alejandro stopped and looked at her. In the dim light of the garden, his features looked less stern. "I don't like my family being rude to guests. That's all." "Guests? I thought she was your fiancée." "You know exactly what you are," he said coldly, and walked away. But Elena had seen something in his eyes, a flash of protection, respect. Whatever it was more than she had expected. The following weeks established a strange routine. Elena spent her mornings visiting her mother, who had miraculously recovered from surgery. In the afternoons, she had protocol and etiquette classes with an instructor Ricardo had hired. And in the evenings, she attended family dinners or social events where she had to pretend to be the perfect bride. Alejandro was consistently cold, but courteous. He never touched her more than necessary, never initiated personal conversations, and always maintained a deliberate physical distance. Elena began to wonder if he was really as bad as he seemed, or if he was simply protecting himself from something. The answer came one night when Elena woke up to screams coming from Alejandro's study. It was 3 a.m, and he clearly thought everyone was asleep. "I don't care what the contract says," he shouted into the phone. "Find another way to resolve this." Elena crept up to the half-open door. Alejandro was standing in front of his desk, his hair disheveled and his shirt wrinkled. He looked completely devastated. $3 million? Are you crazy? That's more than I have liquid. A pause. No, I'm not going to ask my grandfather for money. I've caused enough trouble. Elena frowned. Alejandro was having financial problems. That didn't make sense. He was the heir to a business empire. "Look, give me 1 more week. I'll find the money." Another pause. "Yes, I understand the consequences. No, I'm not running away. 1 week. Alejandro hung up the phone and slumped back in his chair, burying his face in his hands. Elena had never seen him so vulnerable. Without thinking, he knocked softly. "Alejandro, are you okay?" He jerked his head up, and Elena saw panic in his eyes before he composed himself. "What are you doing up?" "I heard screams. I thought maybe—" "Go back to your room, Elena. This isn't your problem. Maybe I can help." Alejandro laughed bitterly. "Help? You? With what?" The question hurt more than Elena wanted to admit. "You're right. I'm sorry for bothering you." She turned to leave, but Alejandro's voice stopped her. "Elena, wait." When she turned around, he seemed to be struggling with himself. "Do you really want to help?" "Yeah." "Then stay away from this. Stay away from me, because everything I touch turns into a mess." Elena felt a pang of pain for him. "Alejandro, go away, Elena, please." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. There was something in Alejandro's voice, in the way he had looked at her, that disturbed her deeply. He wasn't the cold, calculating man he pretended to be. He was someone who was suffering, someone who was struggling with demons she couldn't understand. The next morning, Elena decided to investigate. She used her access to the mansion to search Alejandro's study. She didn't find much, but she did discover something interesting. A photo. Hidden in his desk drawer, it was of Alejandro with a beautiful woman, both smiling, genuinely happy. On the back, someone had written, "To my eternal love, Alejandro, always yours, Isabella." Elena felt a pang of something she didn't want to identify as jealousy. This must be the bad love experience Ricardo had mentioned. That afternoon, Elena decided to confront Ricardo directly. She found him in his office, reviewing documents. "Mr. Mendoza, I need to know what happened to Alejandro." Ricardo looked up. "What do you mean? You said you had a bad love experience. What really happened?" Ricardo sighed deeply. "Isabella Vega. Alejandro loved her with every fiber of his being. They were together for 3 years, planning to get married. But it turned out she was only with him for the money. When her family lost their fortune in a financial scandal, she immediately ran off with someone richer. When did this happen?" 2 years ago. Since then, Alejandro has built walls around his heart. He's become cynical, cruel at times. But Elena, I see the way he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. There's something different about him with you." Elena felt her heart race. What does that mean? He doesn't treat you the way he treated the other women I've tried to introduce him to. With you, there's respect, even a certain affection, even though he tries to hide it. That night, Elena couldn't focus on anything else. Was it possible Alejandro had feelings for her? Or was he just projecting his own confusing feelings? Because, to his horror, Elena had begun to develop feelings for him. She couldn't pinpoint exactly when it had started, but she could no longer deny that what had started as a business arrangement had turned into something much more complicated. Her chance to find out the truth came 3 days later, when Alejandro didn't show up for family dinner. Elena found him in the garden, sitting on a bench, staring at the pond. "Can I sit down?" he asked. He nodded without looking at her. Elena sat next to him, keeping a certain distance. "My mother used to bring me here when I was a kid," Alejandro said suddenly. "She said running water washed away all my troubles." "Did it work?" "When I was 7, yes." A pause. "Now, not so much." Elena gathered her courage. "Do you want to talk about what's bothering you?" Alejandro looked at her for the first time. "Why do you care?" Because I care about you." The words came out before Elena could stop them. Alejandro stood still, studying her face as if looking for signs of deception. "Don't say things you don't mean," he finally murmured. "Who says I don't feel them?" "Elena, don't make this any harder than it already is." "Make what more difficult?" Alejandro stood up abruptly. "Pretending this is real, pretending I actually care about you when I know you're here for the money." Elena stood up too, feeling a surge of anger. "You know what? You're right. At first, I was here for the money, but that changed. When? When I saw you defending me at that dinner. When I heard you crying in your office. When I realized you're not the cold man you pretend to be." Alejandro laughed bitterly. "Oh, really? And what kind of man do you think I am?" "Someone who is hurt, someone who is afraid to trust again, someone who is struggling with issues they don't have to face alone." "You don't know anything about me." "Then tell me. Tell me why you need $3 million. Tell me why." "You'd rather suffer alone than accept help." Alejandro froze. "How do you know? I heard your phone call. Alejandro, whatever it is, we can solve it together." "Together?" Alejandro approached her, his eyes flashing dangerously. "You know what, Elena? You're right. I need $3 million. Do you know why?" Elena shook her head. "Because I invested the company's money in a project that failed. Because I trusted the wrong person, and now I owe more money than I can pay. Because if I don't get that money in 4 days, I'll lose everything and drag my family down with me." Elena felt her breath catch in her throat. "Why don't you tell your grandfather?" "Because he's already saved me once. After Isabella, I made some stupid investments trying to prove I could do it on my own. My grandfather covered my losses and gave me a second chance. I can't ask him to do it again. But surely he would rather help you than see you suffer like this. And then what? Do I live forever? Knowing that I can't do anything without my grandfather's help, that I'm a failure who constantly needs to be rescued." Elena finally understood. It wasn't just about the money. It was about pride, the need to prove she could solve her own problems. "Alejandro, asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Easy to say for someone who has never disappointed his entire family. "Are you kidding?" Eleanor laughed humorlessly. "I disappointed my mother when I dropped out of college to work. I disappointed her when I couldn't save our restaurant. I disappointed her when I almost lost her because I didn't have money for her surgery. But you found a way to save her." "Yes, accepting help, swallowing my pride and accepting this arrangement with your grandfather." Alejandro was silent, processing her words. "Alejandro, let me help you, not as your fake fiancé, but as your friend. How could you help me? You don't have $3 million. No, but I have something. Better. I have an idea. Eleanor took a deep breath. How about we organize a fundraiser? A charity event. Your family has a lot of wealthy connections. We could frame it as support for small businesses or something. Elena, that would take months to organize. I have 4 days. Then let's do something more drastic. How about selling something? Do you have any personal assets you could liquidate? Alejandro was thoughtful. I have an art collection that might be worth something, but not 3 million. What else? I have shares in other companies, but they're all pledged as collateral for other loans. Elena paced back and forth, thinking. How about we talk to the person you owe the money to? Maybe we could negotiate a payment plan. Elena, you don't understand what kind of people I'm dealing with. They're not exactly the kind of people who accept payment plans. Elena stopped. You mean they're private lenders with unconventional collection methods? Elena felt a chill. Are you in danger? If I don't pay in 4 days, yes. Alejandro, you have to tell your grandfather. This is too dangerous. No! Alejandro approached her. Elena, promise me you won't tell my grandfather anything. Promise me. I can't promise you that. Elena, I'm not going to promise you I'll stay quiet while they put you in danger. Then this is over, Alejandro said coldly. Tomorrow, I'll tell my grandfather we broke off the engagement. You can keep the money he already paid you. Are you crazy? I don't care about money, I care about you. You don't care about me, you just feel sorry for me. You're an idiot, Elena yelled, finally losing her patience. I'm in love with you, you stubborn piece of shit. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena realized what she had said and felt her breath catch in her throat. Alejandro was looking at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. What did you say? He asked hoarsely. I didn't mean... What did you say? Elena looked him straight in the eyes. That I love you, that I fell in love with you like the idiot I am, knowing this was just a business arrangement. Alejandro approached her slowly. Do you know what you're saying? That I'm a fool, that I broke every rule we set, that I fell in love with the wrong man at the wrong time. Elena. And I know you don't feel the same. I know that to you, I'm just another employee, a cheap actress your grandfather hired for a role I can't play properly. Are you done? Elena nodded, feeling tears begin to well up. Because I have something to tell you, Alejandro said, taking her face in his hands. You're not the only one who broke the rules either. Elena felt her breath catch in her throat. What do you mean? That I've been fighting this for weeks, that every night I wake up thinking about you, that when I stood up for you at that dinner, it wasn't just polite. It was because seeing someone disregard you hurt me more than it should have. Alejandro, that when I saw you in my office that night worried about me, it was the first time in 2 years that someone looked at me with genuine concern, not pity or interest. Elena felt tears begin to roll down her cheeks. Are you saying that I fell in love with you too, Elena? That I fell in love with the woman who saved a drunken stranger without expecting anything in return? That I fell in love with the woman who cares more about the safety of others than her own? Unable to contain herself any longer, Elena stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. Alejandro responded immediately, holding her as if she were the most precious thing he'd ever held in his hands. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. So what now? Elena asked. Now, said Alejandro. Let's solve this problem together. But first, I need to tell you something else. Elena waited. The money I owe isn't from a bad investment. That? Alejandro sighed deeply. 6 months ago, Isabella came back. She was having serious financial problems and asked me for help. I thought maybe we could try again. Elena felt a pang of pain. Do you still love her? I thought so. But now I realize that what I loved was the idea of her, not actually her. Alejandro took Elena's hands. I lent her the money, but she disappeared again. This time, with the money and another man. Is that why you didn't want to tell your grandfather? Because it would be admitting I'm such an idiot that I fell into the same trap twice. Elena squeezed his hands. Alejandro, we all make mistakes, but they don't define who you are. How can you be so sure? Because the man who stood up for me at that dinner, the one who cares so much about letting his family down, the one who would rather suffer alone than hurt others, that man isn't an idiot. He's someone who loves so deeply that he's willing to sacrifice himself for others. Alejandro looked at her with an expression Elena had never seen before. It was vulnerable, hopeful, and completely in love. I love you, Elena Martinez. And I love you, Alejandro Mendoza. Then let's face this together. Tomorrow we'll go see my grandfather and tell him the truth. The whole truth? The whole truth. About the money, about Isabella, about us. Elena nodded. Together. Together. The next morning, Elena and Alejandro headed to Ricardo's study. Elena was nervous, but Alejandro's hand in hers gave her strength. "Grandpa," Alejandro began, "we need to talk to you." Ricardo looked up from his papers. "About what?" "About why I really needed a fiancé, and about why Elena agreed to help me." For the next hour, Alejandro told his grandfather the whole story. Isabella's return, the borrowed money, the dangerous moneylenders, everything. Elena added her own story about her mother in the hospital. Ricardo listened silently, his expression becoming more serious with each revelation. "So," he said finally, "started out as a business arrangement and ended up falling in love." "Yes," they both answered in unison. "And you really think you can pay $3 million in 3 days?" "I'll find a way," Alejandro said determinedly, "even if it means putting yourself in danger. Grandpa, I'm not going to drag you into my problems again." Ricardo stood up and walked to the window. "Alejandro, do you know what my biggest mistake as a grandfather was?" "Which?" "Making you feel like you have to be perfect, that any mistake is a disappointment." He turned to them. "But mistakes are a part of life. What matters is how we deal with them." "What are you saying?" "I'm going to pay off your debt, but not as a gift, as a loan, with fair interest and a reasonable payment plan." "Grandpa, I can't." "It's non-negotiable, but there is one condition." "Which?" "Let them get married for real. Not because of a will, not because of an inheritance, but because they truly love each other." Elena and Alejandro looked at each other and smiled. "Is that a yes?" asked Ricardo. "It's a yes," Alejandro replied, kissing Elena's forehead. 3 months later, Elena walked down the church aisle, dressed in a beautiful white dress. Her mother, fully recovered, was in the front row, weeping with joy. Ricardo walked her down the aisle, proud as if she were his own granddaughter. Alejandro was waiting for her at the end of the aisle, looking more handsome than ever in his tuxedo. His eyes shone with genuine love, and a smile Elena knew was just for her. "Are you ready?" Ricardo whispered to her. "More than ready," Elena replied. The ceremony was perfect. Their vows were written by themselves, filled with promises of love, support, and honesty. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Alejandro kissed her as if it were the first time. During the reception, Elena observed her new family. Carmen, who had initially been cold toward her, now treated her like a true niece. Alejandro's cousins had completely accepted the small restaurant Elena had opened with Ricardo's help. "Happy?" Alejandro asked, coming up behind her and hugging her. "More than I ever thought I could be," Elena replied, leaning back against him. "Do you know what the most ironic thing about all this is? That my grandfather planned all this from the beginning." Elena turned in his arms. "What do you mean?" "That night you saved him. He wasn't really drunk. He'd had a couple of drinks, yes, but he wasn't as drunk as he looked. Are you saying that my grandfather set a trap for me? That he knew exactly what kind of woman I needed to cure me of my cynicism? Eleanor looked over to where Ricardo was dancing with his mother, both laughing like old friends. How did you know? Because when I asked him how he found the perfect woman for me, he winked and said, "Sometimes the best gifts come disguised as coincidences." Elena laughed. Are you upset? Upset? Elena, she gave me the greatest gift of my life. She gave you, and he gave me you. I think we should thank him. I already did. I promised him our children would call him manipulative great-grandpa. Our children? Alejandro looked at her with a mischievous smile. Well, not right away, but someday. What do you think, Mrs. Mendoza? Elena felt tears of happiness well up in her eyes. I think I like the sound of that. The name or the children? Both. The music changed to a slow song, and Alejandro extended his hand. May I have this dance, my love? Forever, Elena replied, taking his hand. As they danced under the stars, Elena thought about how strange life was. She had started that rainy night only wanting to save her mother, unaware that she would also be saving herself. She had agreed to pretend to love a man, only to discover that true love cannot be faked. What are you thinking about? Alejandro asked. It all started because I wanted to help a stranger. And it ended with that stranger helping you find the love of your life. No, Elena corrected, looking into his eyes. It ended with me finding not only the love of my life, but my home, my family, my future. Do you know what the most beautiful thing about all this is? That? This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Elena smiled, knowing he was right. They had overcome the initial lie, faced their fears and struggles together, and chosen to love each other despite everything. What came next would be their true love story. I love you, Alejandro Mendoza. And I love you, Elena Mendoza, forever. As they continued dancing, Elena looked toward the tables where her guests were celebrating. Her mother was telling stories about the restaurant to Alejandro's uncles. Ricardo was showing wedding photos to anyone who would see them. The mansion servants, who had become like family to Elena, laughed and danced as if they were the most important guests. This was her new life. A life that had begun with a lie, but had become the most beautiful truth she'd ever known. Do you know what we're going to do tomorrow? Alejandro asked. That. Let's start writing our true story. No compromises, no lies, no pretense. Just the two of us building a future together. What if I make mistakes? Then we'll face them together. What if I make mistakes? Then we will face them together as well. Promised. Promised. And as the music continued and the stars shone above them, Elena knew she had found something more. Valuable than all the money in the world, she had found her place in the world alongside the man she loved. 1 year later, Elena woke up to the familiar sound of rain pounding against the windows of her new house. But this time, she didn't feel fear or despair. She felt Alejandro's arms around her waist and smiled. Good morning, Mrs. Mendoza, he murmured against her hair. Good morning, Mr. Mendoza. They had moved into their own house 6 months after the wedding, a beautiful home. They had designed together. Elena had insisted on a large kitchen, where she now developed recipes for her restaurant chain, which had grown to 5 locations in the city. Do you know what day it is today? Alejandro asked. Wednesday? It's the anniversary of the night you saved my grandfather. Elena turned in his arms. Really? Exactly 1 year ago, a beautiful and brave woman saved a stubborn old man from being hit by a bus, and without knowing it, she also saved her cynical grandson from the worst fate of all, a life without love. Do you know what's the most amazing thing? Elena said, caressing his face. That night when I left the hospital with no hope, I never imagined that in a year I would be here, in the arms of the man I love, with a family that adores me, with a thriving business, and with—" Elena stopped, biting her lip. "And with what?" Alejandro asked, intrigued. Elena smiled mysteriously. "With the most wonderful news I could give you." "Elena, you're scaring me. What news?" Instead of answering, Elena took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "In 8 months we'll have one more reason to thank your manipulative grandfather." Alejandro stood still for a moment, processing her words. Then a huge smile spread across his face. "Are you saying that we're going to be parents?" Alejandro kissed her with all the passion and tenderness in the world. "I love you so much, Elena, so much that sometimes my chest hurts." "Are you happy?" "I'm more than happy. I'm complete." That afternoon, they went to visit Ricardo, who received the news with tears in his eyes. "A great-grandchild," he murmured, hugging Elena as if she were his most precious treasure. "Do you know what name I like?" Elena said as they ate dinner at the family mansion. "Which? If it's a girl, I like Hope, because that's what you gave me when I thought all was lost. What if it's a boy?" Elena looked at Ricardo with a mischievous smile. "Ricardo, to the man who brought us together with his master plan." Alejandro's grandfather was so excited that he spilled wine on his shirt. "Are you sure?" Alejandro asked. "Absolutely. That man didn't just save my mother's and my life, he saved all of us." As they walked home that night, Elena reflected on how strange life's paths were. She had started by trying to save a stranger, ended up being saved by him, and now she was bringing a new life into the world with the man she loved. "Do you know what I'm going to teach our son?" Alejandro asked. That you should always help others, because you never know when that act of kindness will change your life forever. And you know what I'm going to teach him? That true love can't be faked, but sometimes it comes disguised as something completely different. Like a business contract. Like a business contract. Elena leaned back against the car seat, feeling a profound peace. The story that had begun with "he just wanted to help" had ended with something much more beautiful. A family, true love, and the promise of new generations who would carry forward the most important lesson of all. May kindness always find a way to come back to you, multiplied by 1,000. Dear followers, we've reached the end of this beautiful love story. If you were as moved as I was by Elena and Alejandro, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to believe in true love. Comment below what your favorite part was, and if you want more stories like this. See you in the next video with more romance, drama, and happy endings. The story that began with "he just wanted to help" ended with the most beautiful lesson of all. That when you help others from the heart, the universe conspires to give you everything you need. And Elena Mendoza, mother, wife, businesswoman, and eternal believer in human kindness, knew that this was just the first page of the most beautiful story of her life, the story of true love.